So, what is spontaneous sobriety? All this talk about, just flipping the switch and becoming a non drinker. In this module, I'm going to go over the three key ingredients to what comes together to create spontaneous sobriety. But it really is a decision. Spontaneous sobriety is basically when someone just quits drinking or abusing some other substance or addictive behavior, and they just stop on their own. Science shows that really 75% of people that recover from addictive addiction issues, do so spontaneously. And when people just stop on their own, in general, if they do go back to drinking, on average, there's about a 2-year period, a timeout, where it takes the brain time to heal. So there are people who are able to moderate and go back to normal. I'm not going to use the word healthy, I can't do it, but normal drinking that's not problematic. They're the person that can have a glass of champagne at the wedding. They're a person that have a glass of wine at an evening out. They're not drinking on a regular basis, but they can drink and it doesn't bother them. In general, people who are able to move from active addiction into that moderation, there is on average a 2-year timeout window. And so that's something to keep in mind. And what I know about what I'm going through, I am 16 months sober now, and you couldn't pay me to drink. Alcohol's right up there with shitty cheeseburgers from McDonald's. Like, am I saying I'm never eating another cheeseburger? Well, no, but why would I? That's how I feel about alcohol. So in the future, will I choose to have a glass or something at some point? I can't imagine why I would, but I do know that, having given myself multiple years to heal, I can make that decision in the future and I don't have to worry about it. But the key to being a person who doesn't need alcohol is that you don't need it. You can take it or leave it. So for me, as long as I always feel like if somebody said, you're never having another glass of alcohol again, I'm fine, and it doesn't become a thing, then I know that I am spontaneously sober. And so looking at the science behind what is spontaneous recovery, there is a long time period that when it occurs naturally. And so what I've done is looked into a lot of the science and looked at other programs that are promoting, the non-12-step approach to just educating yourself, making the decision, learning how to self-care, learning how to re-identify as what you want. I've looked at all of those things to really kind of tease out the factors that take the process from being years long to kind of an overnight situation. And that is what we're going for in this program. That is what I would say has happened to me. Even though, all of these modules are full of my best thoughts about recovery and all of the underlying emotional issues such as boundaries and loneliness and codependent behaviors and how to practice self-care. All of these things are important in terms of recovery, but recovery is not just about not drinking. It's about learning how to thrive in your life and taking back your power. So there are three key factors that I'm going to go over. The first factor for spontaneous sobriety is that you have to shift your locus of control. You have to take back your power. And here's what that looks like. For me, for several years, when I was still drinking towards the end, I would pour drinks feeling resigned. Like, I didn't want to be tied to alcohol. I didn't want to be drinking on a Monday night. I didn't want to know that if I opened a bottle of wine, I would finish that bottle of wine. I just had kind of resigned myself to, I guess this is the way it is. I guess I can't help it. Even though I'm a person that I believe I can do anything in other contexts of my life with this addictive substance. a thought had gotten in that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I just did not feel like I had any control. And, this self-fulfilling prophecy, it comes from the fact that society teaches us that substance use disorders are permanent, they're incurable, they're irretractable, that, once you hit a certain point of dysfunction, there's no going back. And so we internalize these beliefs. So even in other contexts of our lives, we believe that we can do anything that we set our mind to. Ultimately, we're standing there with the bottle of wine and we think, I can't control this. All I can do is manage it. And, that's the battle. That's what becomes so unpleasant about alcohol use disorder, is that then you spend all of your time managing this addiction. From, the first time you wake up in the morning and you didn't sleep well and you don't feel well, so you need to exercise and hydrate and take your supplements and positive mental think yourself back into a functional day, and then you go through your day and you achieve what you need to achieve, and then all of a sudden that internal negative voice that says you're awful and you're out of control suddenly turns over into, hey, you deserve a drink. And it's just this horrible repetitive cycle. So recognizing that you have a belief in your head that you can't change and that this will be hard, those beliefs are what have been working against you, and those are the beliefs that you have to recognize are not the truth. The first step to spontaneous sobriety is to understand that the question is not, am I an alcoholic? The question is, would my life be better without alcohol? And when you answer yes to that, then you are moving into a place of power. So you're not quitting drinking because there's something wrong with you. You're quitting drinking because you deserve better. So the first step in spontaneous sobriety is to take back your own power and to recognize that when those beliefs come in, that I can't change, this is going to be hard, this is going to be unpleasant, that all of those things are not true, that you can replace those beliefs. And a lot of these modules that are in this program, you go through one thought at a time, one problem, one social situation at a time, and you confront those beliefs. But ultimately, for spontaneous sobriety, you have to believe that this substance abuse disorder that you're dealing with is not permanent and that you can do something about it. That's it. That's the first thing. So, the things that have undermined your sense of power are the fact that you've continued to drink despite negative consequences. You've had the hangovers, you've had the memory loss, you have the, anxiety and just the regret and feelings of, a loss of control, and yet you haven't been able to change that. So what we do in this recovery university is we start to shift that and we build on each success, and we use positive psychology to pull out the things that you're doing right and to identify your strengths and to identify where your needs are and what you need to do to meet them. We just do that one thing at a time, literally. We just take back your power one step at a time, but you have to believe that that is possible. So I guess right now, ask yourself, do I believe that ultimately I can have what I see in other people who are non-drinkers, that have gotten over the hurdles and learned a new way of behavior and learned new coping skills? Do I believe that's possible? And, if you believe it's possible in somebody else, you see it, you can look at me, you can look at other people and say, I want what she has. Then if you believe it's possible in me, then you can probably believe it's possible in you as well. So you just have to recognize that there's a belief working against you. It's that wine wench. It's that addictive voice in your head that's not you. It's just thought patterns that have repeated over and over that you've used to justify continuing to drink. And ultimately, those thoughts have led you into feeling very defeated. So if you recognize that you can feel a different way, if you think a different way, because it's possible in other people, therefore it must be possible for you, then that's the first step to spontaneous sobriety. The second thing that you have to do is you have to remove the shame and the blame of, you just have to take that out of the equation. You have to take that out of the fact that you're here because you've done something wrong and that you're out of control. And you have to replace that with the belief that any mistakes that you make moving forward are proof that you're doing the right thing. Instead of using any mistakes that you make, okay, so there was a beer in the fridge and you did drink it, or you ended up, breaking your pact that you're not drinking for these 12 weeks and you have a drink. Instead of using that as proof that you can't do it, and allowing that shame and blame to come in, you have to use any mistakes that you come up against as proof that you're doing it right, because it's reinforcing your belief that you need to quit drinking. So you have to shift into a positive thing. Shame and blame just prolongs our fear of change. It creates more isolation because we don't want to talk about it, and then it co-creates more self-destructive behaviors. So if you're willing to just acknowledge these are the struggles I'm having, and that you have compassion, and that you understand that you can't just quit drinking one day and everything's going to be perfect from here on out, that recovery is a process. It's an uphill climb, and there's going to be setbacks. You're going to experience resistance. You're going to have pain points, things that are uncomfortable. I still have issues where, and it's always nice people. It's not the jerks in my life. It's always the nice person who, and for me, it triggers my shame when they say, "Oh, you're not drinking? I didn't know you had a problem." Well, that just, for me, it just triggers. It just triggers my shame. And so if I can recognize that that's shame and not a reflection on who I am, and understand that dealing with that feeling is the next obstacle in my path, then I can continue to make forward progress. So, every blunder, every downfall, every fear, every memory that you have of things that are not going well, or fear that you have in the future, you have to use those to create data points that you're learning. You think about a toddler who's learning to walk. That toddler cannot learn to walk without falling down. Falling is what creates the muscle memory. It strengthens the muscles, and it creates confidence. If you don't fall, you can't get back up. So the second part of spontaneous sobriety is recognizing that there is no shame in falling. There is no blame that, somehow you're not capable and you can't do this. Falling is part of forward progress. We fail forward. And I hate the word failure, honestly, but I don't know really what else to say or to use there. We fail forward. But honestly, everything that happens is a learning experience. And when you look at it like that, instead of proof that that you can't do it, whenever you start feeling like you can't do it, it triggers the what the hell effect. And we've all been there. We said we weren't going to drink. We had one glass of wine, and what the hell? I'll just drink the rest of the bottle because who cares? I've already failed. Or, if we're trying to give up sugar and we fail and we have that donut, and then we're like, oh, well, what the hell? I'll just eat the rest of the donuts because it doesn't really matter. Or we miss the day of exercising because we just couldn't get out of bed. And so then that triggers us into a month long of, going back to old habits of not getting up to exercise, whatever it is. So recognizing that the what the hell effect is a product of shame and blame, and instead recognizing that spontaneous sobriety includes acceptance of the fact that there's a learning curve here, and that you can't drink for 10 years, 20 years. Me, I drink for 30 years. You can't do that without ever having to go back and catch yourself with old habits and old neuro pathways and old triggers and cues in your environment and all of these things. You can't go through the process of recovery without addressing and identifying those. So if you recognize that that is part of the process and you feel empowered when you hit an obstacle, that you're moving forward and that you just have to navigate around this, then that is the key to spontaneous sobriety. And then the third thing is, as I discussed in the webinar, you have to create a new identity. And it's best, science shows that it's best when that new identity is not stigmatized. You know, there are boatloads of people out there that proudly identify as alcoholics and proudly identify as recovering addicts. So certainly, you know, they've taken that stigma and they're owning that word, and that works for them. So it's not like that doesn't work. But for me, I don't identify as an alcoholic. I don't identify as a recovering addict. I'm a person who has learned a lot in my life. And one of the things I've learned is that alcohol is addictive. And I got into a negative downward spiral with it. And I got out of it. So I identify as a non-drinker. You know, and I even take it to the point where if someone asks me what I want to drink, I don't even usually say I don't drink. Usually if someone asks me what I want to drink, I just tell them I would like a LaCroix. I would like, this is my standard order when we go out to eat or we're in a bar. I want half soda water, half ginger ale, fresh lime, make it a double. So I don't even say I'm not a drinker. You know, I'm not identifying as any relationship with alcohol. It's just not part of who I am. I don't need to explain it to people. And so creating a new identity is part of your spontaneous sobriety experience. You know, how you think of yourself, how you present yourself to the world. And all of this takes practice and it all takes thought. But if you can identify as a badass, if you can identify as not one of the sheeple, you're not falling for all of the alcohol culture anymore where, you know, as women, we are basically given a shitty consolation prize that makes us tired, increases our anxiety, we can't sleep, and it keeps us numb and dumb. I'm not doing that anymore. So I identify as, you know, I've risen above this cultural trap of the masses that keeps everybody down. And that's a very powerful identity. So, you know, how you choose to identify, that's a very personal thing, but that is the third key of recreating yourself. So that, you know, and we did it when we were drinkers. You know, we identified as drinkers and we identified with all the people at the hangover on Saturday morning after the wedding. You know, we're all sweating it out and having a hair of the dog and doing whatever we have to do. And that gave us an identity. And you can't deny that you're losing that identity. But it's a very easy shift. You can still participate in all the wedding craziness and just be super glad that you're not hanging. It's a very good place of power that doesn't actually take you out of any social situations that you still want to be a part of. It just changes the way you feel about yourself, that you're not missing out and that you're not left out. You're just smart enough to opt out. And that's very important. So that's really it. So to recap, the three keys to spontaneous sobriety are: number one, shifting the locus of control and realizing that you can take your power back. Even if that feels a little inauthentic and scary to you, seeing other people do it proves that it's possible. So you have to believe that you are not permanently tied to alcohol, that you are not permanently sentenced to suffer with either, you know, having to manage and control this addiction or to feel like you're left out. You have to believe that that is possible, number one. Number two is that you have to look at any mistakes, obstacles, setbacks, resistance. You have to look at those and see proof that you're doing the right thing and not proof that, what the hell, it doesn't matter, I can't do this. Okay? And then the third thing is the identity. You have to create a new, non stigmatized identity for yourself so that you feel strong, confident, and powerful. And you know it really doesn't matter what's in your glass, it matters about how you feel about yourself. And just accepting that not drinking is the ultimate statement of power. So that's it. Good luck.